The rifle arrived in a cardboard box with a bent corner and a shipping label half torn away, and the laughter started before she even cut the tape. In a dust-choked forward operating base ringed by HESCO barriers and bad jokes, where reputations were forged in sweat and blood, a mail-order rifle felt like an insult. Someone whistled low. Someone else clapped slow. "What is this, a catalog special?" A voice called out. Mara Hale didn't look up. She lifted the rifle free, felt its weight settle into her palms, and breathed out as if greeting an old friend. The laughter rolled on, unaware it had just marked itself for extinction. Mara had learned early that sound carried too far in the mountains. Words echoed. So did doubt. She kept hers folded neatly away, the way she kept everything that mattered. She was not loud. She was not flashy. She had grown up repairing farm equipment with a father who measured twice and cut once, and when the army recruiter talked about precision and patience, something inside her had nodded. Years later, she stood in a place where mistakes were counted in lives, holding a rifle that no one else wanted to trust. The base had been losing people. Not in spectacular ways that made headlines, but in the slow, corrosive drip of sniper fire that changed how men slept and how convoys moved. The enemy snipers were good. They waited. They learned routes and habits. They chose moments when the wind was just right and the sun had just begun to dip, when shadows stretched long enough to hide intent. Every casualty carved a notch in morale, and the jokes grew sharper to cover the fear. Mara had requested the rifle months earlier. The standard issue had its virtues, but she wanted something specific. A barrel contour she trusted, a trigger she could read like a pulse, a stock that fit her frame without forcing her to fight the weapon. The procurement chain had shrugged. She had filled out forms anyway. The box arrived, and with it the smirks. A sergeant with a booming laugh leaned in. "Hope that thing comes with free returns," he said. Mara nodded politely and carried the rifle to her bunk. She spent the evening in quiet communion, stripping and cleaning, checking tolerances, adjusting the optic. Her hands moved with the calm of habit. She wrote notes in a small, battered notebook, elevation marks, wind calls, temperature shifts. Outside, the generators hummed. Inside, she assembled confidence one careful turn at a time. The first day began before dawn. The mountains held their breath in that thin hour when the sky was neither night nor day. Mara climbed with her spotter, Jensen, a wiry corporal with eyes like glass and a voice that never rose above a murmur. Jensen hadn't laughed when the box arrived. He had watched. That was enough. They settled into a hide overlooking a valley that had swallowed 2 men the week before. Mara lay prone, the earth cold against her ribs, the rifle steady under her cheek. She took the measure of the wind by the way dust lifted and fell, by the memory of how it had behaved yesterday, by the feel of it on her face. Hours passed. Patience stretched thin and then thicker, like muscle learning to carry weight. The shot, when it came, was not dramatic. It was a correction, a whisper. The enemy sniper revealed himself with a careless glint, a movement that suggested hunger for one more success. Mara exhaled and squeezed. The valley swallowed the sound. Jensen's hand tightened once on her shoulder. They didn't celebrate. They moved. The mountains rewarded those who lingered with lessons written in red. By noon, word had filtered back to base. The jokes softened into questions. The sergeant with the booming laugh found himself watching the road with a little more respect. The second day was harder. The enemy adapted. Shots came from angles that tested experience, from distances that punished pride. Mara and Jensen hunted shadows, trading sleep for position, comfort for advantage. At one point, a round snapped past close enough to stir her hair. Fear rose, sharp and immediate. She let it pass through her like a storm through a valley, leaving the ground cleaner behind it. By sunset, there were 4 more notches. Each one carried a story. A wind shift corrected at the last second, a misdirection spotted because Jensen trusted his instincts, a moment when Mara chose not to shoot because the cost would be too high. Precision was not just about pulling the trigger. It was about knowing when not to. Back at base, the mood shifted. The laughter died. The men slept a little deeper. Someone left a cup of coffee by Mara's bunk without a word. She drank it cold and smiled. The third day broke with a sense of reckoning. Intelligence suggested the enemy snipers were coordinating, moving in pairs, baiting shots to draw counters. Mara felt the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders, heavier than the rifle. She remembered her father's voice, steady as a plumb line, "Don't rush what wants to be right." They set up in a ravine that funneled sound and sight in dangerous ways. Jensen whispered ranges. Mara listened to the mountain. The first engagement was chaos, rounds cracking from multiple directions. She shifted, adapted, trusted the rifle and the training and the quiet center she carried. One by one, the threats fell silent. The 11th shot came at dusk. The light bled out of the sky, turning the world into a study of edges. The enemy sniper was clever, patient, nearly invisible. Mara waited, heart steady, breath controlled, the mail-order rifle an extension of will. When the moment arrived, it felt inevitable. The valley exhaled. They exfiltrated under cover of darkness, boots finding stone by memory. Back at base, the sergeant met them at the gate. He didn't laugh. He held out his hand. "Guess the catalog knows a thing or two," he said quietly. Mara shook his hand and nodded. The days that followed were different. The routes reopened. The watchtowers felt less like coffins and more like posts again. Mara became a reference point, not because she wanted it, but because people needed to believe that care and craft could still matter in a place that ate carelessness alive. She never made a speech. She never corrected the stories that grew around her, stories that polished the truth into something brighter and simpler. When someone asked about the rifle, she said it fit. When someone asked about the kills, she said they were part of the job. What she believed, what she carried, was harder to say. On her last night before rotation, Mara sat outside and cleaned the rifle beneath a sky littered with stars. Jensen joined her, quiet as always. "They were wrong," he said, not looking at her. She smiled. "They usually are," she replied, and went back to her work. The rifle went back into its box when she left, the bent corner still bent, the label still torn. Somewhere down the line, someone would open it and laugh. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd remember the days when the laughter stopped and the valley grew quiet again. The message traveled farther than Mara ever did. It moved through barracks and bases, through stories told over bad coffee and better silence. It said that excellence doesn't need permission, that tools are only as humble as the hands that wield them, and that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous, not because they seek to be, but because they are willing to do the work without applause. In the end, the mail-order rifle became a symbol, not of cheapness, but of choice. Of knowing yourself well enough to ask for what you need and patient enough to wait for it to arrive. And in a world quick to mock what it doesn't understand, Mara Hale proved that precision, humility, and resolve could still cut through the noise and save lives, one careful breath at a time.